Welcome to East Tennessee Pinball. Working back on this Slugfest again today. It's actually everything's working, so let me show you where it's at right now. Just booted it up. It's booting. And there you go. No credit dot. If I go into the press the button there, I go into the menus. Everything's working. Well, I can play a game and everything works. Trust me. That wasn't the case when I got this game. When I got this game, it would boot up and everything, but none of the switches would work, including none of the switches here. So you couldn't even get into the menu. I was playing around with it and I figured, well, I'll press this switch. Uh, well, I'm in the menu, so it's not going to do it. Uh, So I just hit the slam switch. So I knew some of the switches were working because it would slam. But I couldn't access any of the game because there weren't any credits on the game, and I couldn't put a credit on the game. The credit switches here weren't working. So I knew there was a switch matrix problem of some sort. So I walked back, opened up the game, and this is what I see. This kind of field repair hack, whatever you want to call it. Uh, so, these three wires right here, they go, there's three pins that are missing right there. That's where they're supposed to be going. That black, yellow, and red go in those three missing pins right there. So I've diagnosed this thing, and at the time, remember, nothing was working. So I was trying to figure out what was wrong. I figured something was bad on the board, so that I measured continuity between each of these pins and their respective points here, and there's just basically a trace on the back of the board, or maybe the front of the board. I don't see it on the front of the board. I guess it's on the back. It's really hard to see these traces. It's not real well lit right here. Anyway, there's no continuity between these pins and these respective points, and there should be. So that's why somebody did this to kind of a quick and dirty fix. Not the best way to do it, but it was working at some point. Probably may have worked for 10 or 15 years. But that didn't explain my problem that nothing was working still. So I got a logic probe and I put my logic probe on each one of these wires respectively. And one of these was actually the enter on the menu on the coin door and should have got me into it. So put my logic probe on here, had Jane press the button, and I could measure that thing. It was it's normally high. She pressed the button and go low. Boo, dee doo dee doo when she was pressing the button. So I knew that everything in the cabinet was working. The switches were working, all the wiring in the cabinet was good. The problem was on the board itself. So I started the next thing up. It goes through a couple of these. There's a reason. Gosh, hard for me to see what these are. One's a resistor, one's I can't even. It's a D14. So there's a diode and a resistor, and then they go up into these LM339. So these are comparators. So these are the ones that measure when these respective signals go low. And these actually are not on the switch matrix. These are wired. Each one has its own independent line. So there's a power going out to the switch and then a line coming back. So they don't have all the diodes. They're not in the matrix. They're separate. So they're supposed to be more robust. So there's about, I don't know, 5 or 6 switches that are like that on the game. They still weren't working. So I was probing around these LM339s, and I could see the signal coming into the LM339. Again, I'd press the button on the door, and I could see the state change on the input, but on the output of it, I could not see the state change, and then after it goes through these, it goes to the U15. So that means either this LM339 was bad or the next chip. So, unfortunately, you don't know if it's the output of one chip or the input of the other chip. Either one can mess up the signal you're trying to see. But if you look real close, you can see that these two comparator chips are corroded. And the reason why is because it's right beneath this battery bank, and you can see the batteries. They've also got a load control. So these current batteries are somebody's put them in there fairly recently, but this is a 30, 40-year-old game. So in its lifetime, it's probably had some corroded batteries. So But here's the weird thing. So I was probing around on these things, and I had the game on all day also, and all of a sudden the thing started working. All the switches started working, and it's working right now. It's been a week. It's still working. But I don't want to leave it like this, and I don't want to leave those chips in there, suspect fail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this board out of here. I'm going to swap these two LM339s. I'm going to move these, take these off. I'm going to put a whole new header pin down here. I'm going to have to recreate the traces from those last three, basically up to these three spots. And I'm going to get rid of this battery up here. I'm going to put in a coin battery. And I'm also going to look at the back of the board and see how bad it is. I mean, I don't know. The front of it doesn't actually look that bad. I mean, there's just little. I mean, you can see the corrosion, but it's pretty minimal on the surface here. The back may be a different story. We'll see. It doesn't look that bad. So I think if I do those three things, the headers, the chips, and the battery, this thing will be good and good to go. So anyway, I'm going to pull it out and take it to the bench, and we'll see where we're at then. Okay, I got the board on the bench. So I've got the board on the bench now, so you can see the things a little bit better. You can see that so the traces are indeed on the top. So like that trace where that pin should be, it's got that trace right there. It goes up to where that red wire. I left a little bit of that red wire so I can hook it up better later. So I've got this yellow tether in my multimeter and the multimeter continuity. So if I have continuity, it's going to beep, and I should be able to touch that right there, and it should beep. It doesn't. It's the same thing if I go between that middle one and the yellow wire and that one and the black wire, which explains why somebody did this. So I'm going to, and I'll show you the back of the board here in a second. The back of the board doesn't look too bad, but so I'm going to swap out this whole header here, and I'm probably going to just put a jumper on the back of the board between each of these respective points, between that and the red, that and the yellow, and that and the black, to basically reproduce that trace. These two LM339s, they're a little corroded. They don't look really that bad. I'm going to take them off, clean that up a little bit. And the battery holder, again, there's a little bit of corrosion. I've seen a lot worse. So I'm going to take this off and, again, clean it up a little bit. You see those little tiny traces are right there next to it. That you'd really, and that what you see there, that yellow stuff, that's actually not corrosion or anything. That's flux where somebody has soldered in a new battery holder. That's what it looks like anyway. That yellow flux. That's not actual corrosion. Anyway, so I'm going to start by taking all this stuff off and cleaning it up, and I'll show you where I'm at. I said I'd show you the back of the board. Here's the back of the board. So it looks like they tried to salvage those 3 pins and gave up on it. The back of the board looks pretty good, really. I don't see any big glaring issues, so nothing there. Alright, so I got everything moved, got these headers removed. The pads look decent, but those 3 traces are dead. I'll have to recreate those. I'll put those on the back of the board. Got these chips out. That one looks pretty decent underneath one. This one looks a little less decent. And one of the traces going from the number 3 pin, which goes back down to this pin here, is not intact. I'm going to have to put that one back. I took the battery out. So this is this is where the 5 volts comes out of it. Well, close to 5. And this is the ground. If you ever, you're wondering which one's which, because they're all lined up together, you flip the board over, you see them. So basically, it's really easy to usually the ground is pretty easy to see. The perimeter of the board is ground, so that's the ground. And usually the opposite corner is your 5 volts. You see that one's going off of it. All these other ones are just connected internally between the batteries. They're on the other side of the board. So that one's going off to the pin. That's their 5 volts, and that's the ground. So, and this middle piece, all that's, if you look, that's probably ground, and look inside, and it is actually indeed ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a coin cell between here and drill a hole here, so it'll be between 5 volts and ground. And the coin cells are really, 3.5 volts, but it's good enough. And shouldn't need a diode on this board because it's already got, non-rechargeable battery, so we're all going to replace with a non-rechargeable battery. It's already got a diode on the board, so that should be good. So get all these done, I'll show you what I end up with. Okay, so I got the board back together, got my new headers in, got my sockets and my new chips, got my coin battery's not going to leak, got my put my traces back on the board, so I'm ready to go. We'll see if this thing fires up. So I got the board back in here, put a new connector on there, repinned all the wires going to it. Looks a lot better with the coin battery on there, and so let's fire this dude up. So I've got a credit dot. It's probably going to tell me I got to set the time or something. Yep, set the time. Ramp position error, fast pitch error. I think probably playing a game, and I'll take care of all that. These system 11s anyway. I don't know about system 9s. If you haven't used a feature in so many, or a switch or a feature in so many games, it'll give you an error. Those errors weren't there before I did the board, and that didn't have anything to do because I haven't messed with it. So actually, let's just see if we can do the ramp test real quick. I think there's a ramp test. Probably is. Here we go. A little noisy, but might need a little lubrication on there. But it's working. Anyway, I think we're all good. Thanks for watching, and go ahead and subscribe. Adios.